another perspective from my mother's point of view, the kind of painful things that she did without thinking, because what she wanted in the end was a child who would assimilate more easily. You know, so that she was a viewpoint. Any other people in the neighborhood, other parents, other kids, kids from other neighborhoods, or Black kids who were still in the South. I mean, you go anywhere with it. I am talking so much. And then when I went from the directions and into the poem itself about what was really happening, and then at the end, I brought it back to the Lysol, so that the last question, what is the difference between disinfection and sanitation? Why are there two different usage directions for each? Answer from the box, the part of it. The EPA defines sanitation as killing 99.9% of bacteria in 5 minutes or less. Lysol products achieve sanitation in 30 seconds. And to bring it back to me, I then counted down from 30 to 1 very slowly to get the audience and the reader thinking, this chemical is on this child's skin for all this amount of time. And everyone's looking for something to happen, some sort of change. But the only change that happened is within the child, not the skin. Okay, so those of you who your thing that you want to write and it's something about yourself, which could be the hardest things to do, because if you are someone who doesn't mind going out reading or sharing your poems with people, you are screwing around with your image in the eyes of other people. I can't tell you how many people think because you're a writer and you've got a book that you are living the life of Riley, that you've got some kind of picture book life. Not that poetry, and I don't think anybody thinks poetry makes a lot of money, but they think you're enlightened somehow. And you're living that romantic reader's life, and I'm a writer's life. And when I making it admitting something and then going, no, I have a son who is in jail, or no, my father was killed in a murder. I'm typical. I'm not all that different, but we care so much about what other people think about us. That kind of truth can be the hardest and the last truth to come to your writing. All right, I want to talk about, where am I? It's 5:30 already? Okay. I want to talk about, let me see what else I have here for you. I've got that. Yep, that was done. Oh, we're getting there. Okay. I want to talk about beauty. If any of you remember or read about, I know you guys are really pretty young. Remember Jonestown? Remember the Reverend Jim Jones? And just hundreds and hundreds of people who took their own lives because he had this sway, this power over them. Most of the people, the majority of the people were African American. And it was something that, we didn't know was going on really. And so it shocked everyone. And we are moved from time to time to write about some aspect of the world that is that painful. I remember I was teaching elements of spoken word class, and my spoken word class is not what my students think it is when they sign up. They go, oh yeah, I'm gonna go in here and spit some rhymes and get this A. It's not quite like that. We go back and we talk about Native American creation myths. We talk about evangelism. We talk about hate speech. Because if you face it, once you get up on a stage or someone opens your book, what you're trying to do, you feel one way and you're trying to get them to feel that way, you know? And so my students were coming in one day and I just had this final picture from Jonestown, was all these bodies, for those of you who don't know, Jim Jones convinced everyone to drink poison Kool-Aid. And so they took their own lives because he had said so. And so this last shot was just a camera panning over the silence with all these, dead bodies. And I just had that on as my students were coming into the classroom. And when they got into the classroom, somebody raised their hand and they said, "What movie is that from?" Had no idea. And that's another whole story. There's so many things that we're not taught or no one talks about. And there are people who've forgotten or don't know where Katrina is right now. I have students who, they just, no one talked to them about it, so they don't know. But one of the hardest ways, and that scene was a very colorful scene because everybody had on their different color clothing, and if you pulled back enough, it was almost like a field of flowers, and one unexpected entry point is to take something that is absolutely horrible and find beauty in it. One other really quick story. There's a woman called Laura Nelson. Her son was named LD. And the police, the law had come to get LD because he was supposedly had killed a white man. This was in Oklahoma in the 1920s. They took him away. His mother went to the courthouse and said, "No, no, no, kill me. Trade my son for me, kill me." And they took her too. They had both of them. The reason I know about this story is because it eventually became a postcard that people were selling, one of the lynching postcards. They took LD and his mother, lynched them both. And it was one of those, "Hey, wish you were here" postcards. They were hung. It was an arching bridge. They were hung, and of course, then this is where people are standing. They were hung underneath that, and the postcard had people all over, just hanging onto the arch of the bridge, and just looking down at these two bodies, and they were hung over a river, and the photos in black and white, and I told my students at one point, I said, "Okay, I want you to write what's beautiful about this scene." Because if you start to, you can write in LD's voice, you can write in his mother's voice, you can write in one of there were kids there, you know, people brought their kids down. You can write in a kid's voice at that time, later on in his life, anything. There's got a lot of things, but I want you to do beauty. What I saw and what I wanted them to see, although it was a still photo, they both hung there. LD's pants were down around his ankles. He had been tortured and mutilated before he was being lynched. There was sun glistening on the water. And although you couldn't see movement, you knew that the bodies were twirling slowly. And I tried to get them, I wanted them to see that, because you are trying to draw your reader into your poem. Celine, you know this, on stage, if you don't get them in those first few lines, they switch off. Same thing if they open your book. I get asked to judge book contests a lot. I read 3 poems, and if I'm not dying to read the rest, there's no reason to read on. Each single poem works that way. You're throwing out a hook and you're saying, "Hey, you want to read about this lynching?" No, I do not. Okay. So how are you going to get them deep enough into the poem? You want them to say, "Well, this isn't about a lynching. This is about something else." and to give them another way to look at it. And sometimes when you pull the beauty out, it makes it more terrible. How dare that day be beautiful? How dare that scene be beautiful? There is, and I'm going to try to get it. I just thought about something that I don't have up, but I'll see if I can get it. I have a series of pictures like that. And that's another thing when you're thinking about how can I write this? That's another thing to take into consideration. You have a lot of work to do before you start writing a poem. You can do that stream of consciousness, I just got to get this down thing. You can do that. But pretty soon, you're going to want to know definitely who you are as a poet. And that's where your choices come in. And if you are known as a person who writes surface, I witnessed this, I write this. I witnessed this, I write this. I witnessed this, I write this. Then that's who you're going to be. Okay. And I'm not saying that every poem you write has to be a poem with this never heard it before, oh my God, amazing entry point. But you owe it to yourself as a writer to keep yourself excited about your own work, to know that there's nothing you can't approach, nothing you can't write. And to say it's difficult is to say, I just haven't found that point yet. To say that I can't write this poem is to say, I just haven't found that point yet. Okay. I wanted to tell you, Incendiary Art, my latest book, was the hardest book I've ever written. There's no light anywhere in that book. Things were happening in this country, and I just went, don't give your reader opportunity to turn away. That's one of the reasons you have to work so hard to get people into the poem, because we snap out of things so fast. We are a country and a people of the next best thing, next big thing. Okay, I don't want to hear about this Katrina. Oh my God, what? What's her name? Monica Lewinsky left a stain on the dress. Let's all go there. Let's all see what's going on. That's who we are. So you want to make sure your reader can't get out of your poem. And that's what the hook is. You hook them, they can struggle all they want, but they want to make it to the end of that poem. Okay, because of what you did, because of the choices you made, because it's not like any of those other poems they've ever read. And that becomes a signature of yours. It's like that person is always going to try. They're going to write about the same things everybody else is writing about, but they're going to try to pull me and keep me into a poem. Okay, so one last example, and I know I didn't read poems, is Emmett Till. Okay, so Incendiary Art was basically about Black Death. There's no other way to put it. Black Death. 2016, Donald Trump's running for office. Somebody at one of his rallies says, I wonder what it's like to burn a body. And they're thinking, wonder what it's like to burn a Black man alive, and everybody's trying to write, well, not everybody's trying to write it, but everybody who knows the urgency of it is trying to write about it. So I finished this book, and my husband, who's one of my first readers, goes, you can't print this. He said, it's all bad news. It's so dark. He said, I had to put it down after 3 poems and rest and pick it up again. All of my readers said the same thing, and I said, no, that's the problem, that we're letting people go. You can always dial the television. You could do, so let's not let them go this time. Let's make them look at, if we're gonna change their minds or get them to talk to someone else about it, they have to look at it. They have to be immersed in it, So Emmett Till died the year I was born. The picture of Emmett Till in his open casket was used as a lesson by every Black parent in Chicago when I was growing up. They took that picture out of Jet magazine and kept it in the house or in their wallets. Or so don't act up. Don't come home late. Don't be. You see this? This is what could happen to you. This, you better be nice to white people. This is what they could do to you. Right? And if you haven't seen that photo, you'll know how horrendous that warning is. They make us look at it. Imagine that's the basis of your rules. That's how you're growing up. Be nice to white people because this is what they could do. Don't overstep your bounds. Okay. So I want to write about Emmett Till. And the only reason Emmett Till got into this book, because I thought, I've written about him a couple of times. I don't know what else I can do. Is I saw a little detail that, guess what? Emmett's mother didn't want to send him to Mississippi. She wanted to bring him to Nebraska, where they had family. He didn't want to go. He wanted to go to Mississippi. They're going to be some cousins his own age. He wanted to do that, right? And you know how you have that eerie feeling that I would much rather not know Emmett Till's name. I would much rather he went to Nebraska with his mama and I never heard about him, And you start thinking about the weird element of chance. You know how when a plane crashes and you talk to that guy who was late, is late getting to the airport, so he didn't get on the plane, or somebody who was supposed to be on and they didn't get on for some other reason. They turned left instead of right and you missed the plane, And I started thinking, let's look at his whole story and let's say what instead of this, he had done this. And keep your mind open. And what does that remind us of? That reminds us of that book that I used to read when I was a kid, that Choose Your Own Adventure books, where you go and they say, hey, if you want Lassie to rescue Timmy from the well, turn to page 12. If you want Timmy to die a horrible death drowning, well, it didn't say that, but something like that. Turn to something. And so you could make your own ending by choosing what pages to turn to. It's great, And so to make the poems different, I didn't think it was just enough to say, here's a poem about something, another choice Emmett Till would have made, is to frame them as I was framing one of those books. Choose Your Own Adventure book. She wanted him to go to Nebraska. Maybe Till had hoped to take her son Emmett on a vacation to Nebraska. Instead, he begged her to let him visit Mississippi. Turn to page 11 if Emmett travels to Nebraska instead. So then the poem you write is a poem about him in Nebraska. What if she had his casket had been closed instead of open? A lot of people identify that open casket picture as the thing that made them change their mind about what was going on in the South. What if she hadn't opened the casket? What if his body had never been found? What if he never went in the damn store? Maybe what if he had not passed that store or seen that woman or whistled or not whistled? So I did two things with them. Is I made them imaginary aspects of his life. Like, what if let's write a poem about this, which put a little light into it because you wouldn't have known his name. But the other thing is I decided to do them as sonnets. Sometimes if you are writing something that has prohibitive emotional content and you're having a hard time, you can distract yourself by assigning it to a form. Okay, so while you're counting syllables and worrying about rhyming words and all that stuff, in the interim, you are getting the story down. Okay, when I teach my writing on the other side of the wall workshop, and it's basically about how to start writing about these things. I tell people, tell me what it is you're having a hard time writing. and they'll say, well, my mother was really psychologically abusive to the point of being physically abusive, but she never hurt me. And my father was like the briefcase in the background going back and forth to work. And that's what a student told me. And I said, have you ever written about that? Well, I almost wrote about the time where I thought she was going to cross over into physical violence, but she didn't. And I said, okay, I want you to tell me that same thing, but I want you to write it in a limerick. I can't do that because a limerick's a funny form, right? I said, who says you can't do something? You know, here's the rhyme scheme. You know, here's the rhyme scheme. There once was a Matt in Nebraska, you know, and said, well, I can't. I said, just tell me what you just told me, but do it that way. So everybody's writing about this thing they can't write about, but they're counting these syllables, and I say, no, that's not working. Blah blah. Getting it down. So here's what she wrote. Okay. Backed into a corner I stood. She'd kill me this time, swore she would. Waving the knife, my mother, his wife, I screamed, and my father said, good. So I said, okay, stop, right? You've said it. Now you have a choice. You can go back on the other side, the safe side of the wall, forget you wrote it, forget that the pen is touching the paper right now, and that or you can take that last line and think, why did he say good? And just write, you know? So sometimes I need to be distracted in order to get started. And I look in some of the form books that I have around here and find some weird Celtic form or Persian or something, and make my math brain take over for a while, you know, because the what I want to say before I finish is I want to tell you about my revision process, and it's going to tie in because the revision process it brings into lets me know how successful I was or was not with some of these, you know, entry point things. The first aspect I revised 3 times. The first is for story. So whatever led you to the keyboard or to your pad and paper was a story you wanted to tell. Make sure that that story in all its essence and all its beauty is in the poem. Okay? Make sure you haven't cut. And one of the things I'd say about form, it's okay to distract yourself with form, but if you find yourself saying something you didn't want to say, or in a way you didn't want to say it in order to adhere to a form, then take it out of the form. You know, you can use the form to distract yourself for a while. If you have to discard it later, that's fine. So make sure the story's all still there, that whatever affected you about the story can affect your reader because it's there. We are the most talented writers because we can put whole unwieldy, messy stories in a tight, controlled little space and the whole story is still there. Okay. First for story. Second one is for language. If you have heard it before, take it out. Okay. I don't mean just things that are important to the movement of the poem. I mean segues, any of that stuff. You know, I can't tell you how many people who are world-winning poets say things like, I got off the bus and started to walk down the street. I mean, the way that reads, you're always just starting to walk down the street. You know, you walked down the street. You didn't begin to talk, you talked. You didn't start to explain, you explained. You know, it's all this little waffle stuff, you know. It might not be important to the poem, but it'll save you 3 words where you can write something that is important to the poem. You know, language, if you've heard it, take it out. You know, you there's like 3 million ways to walk somewhere. You know, and a lot of that has to do with the moving the camera in. You know, my beginning poetry students, I drank a soda. Yeah, did you? You know, what kind of soda? Pepsi. Was it cold? Yes. How cold? How does a cold can look? How do you know? It's like, come on, you know. So make sure. I ask my students. I say vivify a lot. They hate me. They hate that word vivify. It's like, be specific. Make sure when you pick your reader up and put them down in the world of your poem that they could see it. Okay, sensory detail, always important. Go through the senses. You know, can you smell this sound? Can you taste this smell? Can you, you know, just do it. Just it might be weird. It might feel weird the first couple of times, but you know, develop your own language. I need to know, you know, this is Matt, this is Jules, this is Celine, this is Afra, these are all these people. I need to know who you are, you know. And the third is music. Okay. If you are in spoken word, have been through spoken word, anything like that, you need to know when someone tells you, oh, you should be an academic poet, you should learn stuff, that you're already way ahead of where they are. Okay. When you are doing spoken word and you revise, if you walk off a stage and go, something didn't hit me right, and you revise that poem, you are revising for sound. You are saying that word did not hit the air the way I wanted to hit. That line didn't feel right. When I started to take my MFA program, I studied with a woman who was like the meter goddess, you know. And when I first met her, she's looking at my mouth. And I go, are you scanning what I'm saying? And she said, yes. And she said, what you need to know, you are already writing in meter. If you are writing for the stage and you're revising for the stage, you are often revising into a meter. It might be a meter that you've developed, or it could be dactylic something or other, but you're doing it so it's pleasing to the ear, you know? So when I say music, it doesn't always mean meter. It just means say your lines. You know, say your talk while you're writing, say your lines, you know, surprise yourself sometimes, you know? But I think if I had to add a step to that, I would say, could anyone else have written this poem? Okay. And that's the problem with being non-specific. It could be written by anyone. Make sure that every poem contains a choice that only you made. It could be a choice music-wise, language-wise, story-wise, your approach to the story, but make sure that, you know, because I understand that I'm asking you to rethink a lot all at once, but basically I'm asking you to pause before you start writing a poem, consider every possible way you could write the poem, and mostly asking you to pick the one that bothers you the most. Because the one that bothers you the most will hook the reader the best. You know, okay. And it's 6:02. Anyway, do you guys have any questions? Can I do that, Matt? I'm just like calling for questions. Anybody? Is everybody okay? You guys good? That was all right?
Yes.
Okay, do this. Okay, and then I want gallery. I want to see everybody who's sleeping. This is why I wake up the people who are sleeping. Yeah, but really, okay, so I don't know what Matt's thinking, but if you guys have any questions or anything and you want to put them in the chat, I'd be glad. Is that okay, Matt?
Oh, of course.
Okay, I'd be glad to answer. And I really hope I helped you guys a little. And I'm gonna put the file, the poems, a lot of the poems that I talked about and maybe a couple that I didn't. Oh, there was one other thing. I'll answer this question. There was one other thing. I watch a lot of cartoons. You know, I like cartoons. I like old cartoons. And then one day I was watching Tom and Jerry. And those of you who watch Tom and Jerry a lot, you see every once in a while you see a black woman's legs, right? Right. And so I got curious, because you should all be really curious. You should all be very curious all the time. Who is that? I asked myself. And it wound up that she has a website. I mean, she didn't start the website, but she has a website, and it's every instance of her legs appearing on Tom and Jerry. And someone had named her, and her name was Mammy Two Shoes. So I was mad then, right? So I go, who's that? You know? And then so I find out that Tom is her cat, that they gave Tom to her. So Tom's her cat. And so I wrote this poem, you know? So don't be ashamed to look back in your childhood and connect it to things you want to write about now. Like Popeye. I looked at Olive Oil. I was like, what's her story? Why is she on the docks, walking the docks? Why she got these two men? How come Bruto can tie her to the train tracks and she goes back to him every time and Popeye saves her and then she does the thing all over again? What is that? So just my scope goes everywhere. It goes back, behind me, up, down, animated, you know, stick figures, you name it. There's a question here somewhere. Okay, is it okay to send questions after the call? I have some, but have to get on another call. It's okay to me. Or I can put my email address down if you want to send me a question later. I can do that now, actually. Don't all of you send me questions on email. Just, you know. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so we're gonna go back, and somebody said piles of help. Thank you, Catherine. Yay! I like piles of help. When writing gets harder, you aren't feeling it. What do you do? What do you turn to in hopes of coming back to the desk? Well, I don't think that writer's block exists, really. I think the thing is, don't think of yourself as a poet. Think of yourself as a storyteller, okay? So if you think of yourself as a storyteller, then you let the story tell you how it wants to be told. Don't say you can't write short stories, you can't write a novel, you can't do an essay. You can do all of that stuff. But here's my thing. Always have another piece of writing working. Whether it be, even if you're stumbling through it, whether it be a short story or essay about something, or the best thing is always have a folder with a children's book on your computer, your children's book, okay? The good thing about a children's book, no matter how goofy it is, it's willing suspension of disbelief. It could be another world. You could play with language. It'll make you laugh. You can make the moon talk. You can do all kinds of weird stuff. It takes you so far away from the hard stuff that you're working on. And you can playfully write your children's book, and it could be goofy. I mean, you can write it seriously, or, you know, you could take what you're working on that's so hard and say, how would I write this if I was writing this to a 6-year-old? You know, anything. Just have something wacky that you can work on. It could be a bad romance novel. You know how they have those or a bad romance story. You know how they have the things with the terrible beginnings, or you can write a story with a bunch of cliches in it or something. Just something lighthearted to get you away, but that keeps you writing. I think that's the most important thing, is not to stop writing, to say, I'm having a hard time with this poem, I'm just gonna go do something else altogether. It's like switch your stance at your desk and say, let me call up this story about snot, you know, the snot with the name, snot with a name, or I don't care, anything, but just something weird, something so far outside of your writing. I also write 10 pages a day, but here's what that consists of. And every time I say that, people go, I could never. I'm not talking about 10 pages of perfect poems. If it might be a couple of pages of working on revising a poem, but let's say I want to write a poem about firemen and I want to know what it's like to run into a fire, what goes through their head. And I look up an interview with a fireman and I take some notes from that interview. Those notes become part of the 10 pages. Okay, 10 pages toward your art, because you will not start to take this seriously unless missing a day of writing feels the same to you as when you miss a day of work. Okay, imagine waking up one morning and just not going to work. How many people do you have to explain that to? Who do you have? You got to call somebody. You can't just not show up, right? There's responsibilities. And until you feel the same way about your poetry, if you decide I'm doing no 10 pages, I'm going to the club, right? You go to the club. Well, you used to be able to go to the club anyway. So you go to the club, you get home, it's 3 a.m. You got like 3 pages. Okay. You got 7 pages to do before you go to sleep. You have to make a commitment. That's the same commitment when you signed your contract to get your job. You're taking it seriously, right? Is it a game? Is it something you want to do for the rest of your life? And if it is, you got to sign in at X time. I got to do this, and trust me, your 10 pages are going to be sloppy as hell at first. Big ass writing. There'll be like one paragraph on each page, crayons, yeah, but the thing is the commitment, and after a while, you'll see how essential that is, notes about poem ideas you had that day. I mean, it becomes your way of kind of decompressing, something you overheard that day that's going to make a good poem, anything. 10 pages of, I have been to work for my art. Okay, I have done this for my art. And then you can go to sleep knowing that you fulfilled, that you've gone to work that day. So that helps me a lot. So when I can work on my 10 pages, if not, stuff you see in the news and you go, I got to write a poem about that, and take some notes from the news, or, find somebody that's already talked about it or something. So that's when you aren't feeling it, that's it. How do you get other people to read and care about an elegy when it's so specific to you? And yeah, you're right. It's got to be specific to you. The way I describe an elegy is like, you tell me what hollow is left now that your grandfather's not here. It's basically what the world is like now that you're gone. How I move through my days now that you're gone. So it's going to be specific. It's going to be specific in the way that the hot water cornbread poem was specific. But it's strange. It's not in one way. It's everybody has got to learn how to handle the death of someone they love. Okay, you would not believe how much in the last week and a half I have started crying just in the middle of nothing. And this is because of my dog. This is, I can't look at that corner without seeing that. I got another dog who's looking around like, where's that annoying dog I used to be around here driving me crazy? Where do you go? So I'm looking at him trying to figure out what's going through here. It's and so when I think about it, I'm thinking about it in a very specific way, specific to my dog. But that story, hopefully, when I write it, will help someone else who's gone through the same thing. So the specificity doesn't make it less powerful or less, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't make it less relatable to someone who isn't you. You know, as a matter of fact, the more specific you're able to be, the more important it'll be to them to remember those same type of things about the person that they lost. So an elegy should be yours, but hey, it's governed by loss. It's governed by death. And that's universal. That's universal. People have been trying to send me, you know, poems they wrote when they lost parents to help me with the loss of my dog. You know, and imagine that. It's another species, you know, but the loss feels the same. So I don't, yeah, I think if you've written it well and it is specific to you, it can be even more helpful to someone else. Would you illuminate us with some of your self-care? Okay. I don't have any right now. The whole COVID thing has been very strange. It's been hard dealing with students online. Uh, I usually travel a lot. Like I'm pretty sure I'd probably be in Nebraska now doing this if it wasn't for COVID. And it's been hard kind of, a couple of things have happened. It's like my mother had to go into a nursing home. So she's in a nursing home in Chicago and she's very rapidly losing more and more of her memory. You know, losing my dog, being really, really mad at various aspects of this country. Sometimes I just forget things that I normally, just one second, Kay, where did you go before?
I left an hour early. The sun's setting early with fucking me.
Oh, okay. All right. Talk to you later. I'm sorry. My granddaughter was leaving for work. So I'm trying to put it back together. I mean, what I used to do before this happened is I had a great acupuncturist. I stopped looking at my screen about an hour before, or an hour and a half, ideally, before bedtime. And now I'm just, oh God, what did Trump do today? You know, I've got it in my face up until, you know. So now knowing that we're probably going to be like this for a while, I'm trying to see and reshape the routine as it has to be now. Like I can't go and see my acupuncturist enough, and I love my acupuncturist, and I'm not taking, I will say, I'm not taking enough time for myself. When I have time, I am thinking about what I should be doing, what I should be writing, what I should be reading, so the idea is learning to cut it off at a certain time of the day and just saying no more of that. No more of that. And plus, there's 8 million Zoom readings on now. So even the time when I'm supposed to, you know, the National Book Awards are like tonight. You know, when I'm supposed to be resting, I'm looking, and then I see another poet talking about what they're doing, and I go, I should be doing that. And I go off and I start, you know, so I'm trying to put it together now, a 2020 version of what self-care looks like. Yes, that's what I'm doing. I would love to have said, oh, my masseuse is coming in now or something. Thanks. This picked up. Thank you. Back. Thank you. What was the first poem and what was it about? Oh, what sparked? Oh, the poem about the barber, or Michelle, you there? Is that the poem you talked? The first poem I talked about?
I think it was about the Undertaker.
Oh, that one. What was okay? Oh, what was the first? Oh, the persona thing. Two things sparked the interest in it. One was that a lot of young men were being shot where I was living at the time, and it had gone beyond that shoot them in the leg, shoot them to warn them type thing, and to shoot them to kill them. There was some kind of a gang war and all that going on. And so, like all of us, we take that and we go, who then must be involved? Okay. The mother, what about the friends? What about the people? What about that empty desk at school? What about the body? Who has to deal with the body? Um, uh, I think too many of the kids were thinking of the deaths as cartoon deaths. Oh, you flail dramatically and you fall and there's no blood. Well, that doesn't happen. So who has to handle the body? Who wants to see the body again? The mother. Who's in charge of changing that body so that the mother can see it with it looking like her son again and not like a gunshot victim? What's involved in that? What kind of things do you have to do to get the body back? How, and that's stuff that on the low, I think all of us are kind of fascinated with that, but we don't want to think about it too much. Yeah, that's what sparked the interest. And it was just, I knew that the story, witnessing it from outside, when you have so many places that child's body had been and was going, that the story wasn't mine to tell, that it had to be someone outside of me. And I decided that the undertaker was the most riveting one, just because I had information from him about what it was like the things he had to do to the body. But then when I revisited it, I thought, I wanted the young men to see, when you are gone, when you are taking the chances that you are taking, this is what we're left with, and so the next persona was the child on the slab, and thinking back to the choices that had brought him there. So yeah, that's what it was.
I have a question. For all of us who want to start on these, hypothetical 10 pages a day, I don't know if we could be like you, Patricia, but if we want to start our writing, do you have a quick writing prompt or anything that can spark that creative drive for us?
I think what you should do, remember when I had you guys at the beginning, think of what it was you should be writing that you're not writing? Okay, write the story of it. Nobody else is going to see it. Write it out, stream of consciousness. Maybe you could even write about why it's been so difficult for you to write, or any attempts that you've made before now. Just go. And then when you've got that down, pick one of these modes, one of these entry points, persona, finding the beauty in it, a form, a ritual, a process poem, any of that, and see if there's an approach that you can start on to write about that thing. But okay, and the good thing is sometimes I'll try a form, a weird thing, and it doesn't work, and I'll even write about what I did wrong, how that, honestly, because it's something I can look at and learn from the next time. So when I say toward your art, that covers a lot of ground. Something is going to help you the next time you look at it. You might even look at other people who have who've written about something close to the issue that you're trying to write about. More than likely, most people's things are something that's going on in their life that certain poets have termed it confessional, and you're going, well, nobody wants to hear about my, and then you don't write it. And that's a shame. That's a shame. This writing is how we get from day to day. It's how we're rooted. It's a language we have that nobody else has. If people in the post office took poetry classes, they wouldn't be shooting up the postal service all the time. Well, that was a while ago, but if you could get, who was some guy, and I didn't even listen to it because it's something they wanted you to click on, where some guy was taught, they asked some neo about George Floyd, and he was talking about George Floyd's death, and something that they weren't enough cops on his neck, or they weren't on his neck long enough, or something. It was terrible. But it's the same thing I say to people when they're like dialing away from Fox News, or they're doing something, and you have to know who these people are, you know? So when you're watching the news and you're thinking, here's somebody I don't even want to watch, I don't want to hear what he has to say, make yourself listen and then think, how would I talk to that person? You know, how would I talk to them? The problem is we're hiding too much. We're not talking to each other. We're in our different camps. We're not revealing anything. So I don't know, it's disheartening in a way, but I like what's happening in that more people are turning and asking poets things. You know, poetry doesn't have a very good reputation in the States. You know, I've been places where poets come home and people are waving placards with the poets' faces on them and cheering and singing songs. And this was in Germany. And because we're talking about older countries where poetry has been, you know, we're a new country. But really, they had to shut a train station down because some poets who had been on a train crossing the countryside, where they would get off every once in a while in these small towns, and the town would be waiting. There'd be like a, you know, they have little pagodas up and stuff, and they'd paint children's faces, and there'd be music and food, and then they'd get on a train and go to the next place. When they got back to Berlin, so many people were waiting for them, they had to shut the train station down. They had to pass the poets out of the train over their heads. They had flags, and people had done drawings of the poets, and they were waving, you know, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. And I got back home, and I got on the bus, and I was like, people are like, sit your ass down. It's like, I'm a poet, you know? There are places where people look to the news for the news, and they look to the poets for the truth. And finally, because there is such a lack of truth now, people are saying, let's go see what these poets have been talking about. You know, so it took a disaster to get them to, you know, so now there's a real responsibility in what you write, because a lot of people who have never turned to poetry before are now looking at you and looking for guidance. You know, it's what we thought we wanted. So now that we got it, what are we gonna do? I don't even know how I started that. I'm not formal or professional, me either. I only write whenever I feel overwhelmed or hopeless, me too. Most of my poems have to deal with the humanities and hard emotions or issues. Depression, is it ever too cliche? It's only gonna be cliche if you write about it broadly. It's gonna be cliche because there's less language that you have to work with, okay? That's one of the things, that's one of those admissions where you have your social media, you know, the clips of you on your skateboard and your surfboard, and you're just so wonderful, everything, all your vacations, and you know you're not really living that life, you know? And then you have your real self. And just saying, I had a hard day, I don't know how I can get through this day, is gonna disappoint a lot of people who look up to you. You know, I wanna live my life like, and then, uh-oh, what, you know? It can be too cliche when you first write it. It can be cliche for a long time, but if you keep looking at it and writing farther into it each time, that will start to disappear. Sometimes the cliche is a safety net. If you write about it in a way that you've always heard about it, it keeps you safe. It keeps you in a community. You're not alone. When you begin to write about it as it is specific to you, it's a lonelier place, but it's more powerful and it's going to help you more. Sometimes it'll take years. I don't want you to think, especially you're writing about something like that, I don't want you to think that a couple revisions are going to get you there. That sometimes that stroll toward that wall that you have to get over, it's 2 steps forward, 8 steps back sometimes. You know, it's you touch it and it's so hot you jump all the way back to where you started, you know? What poetry can do for us is amazing, but the first thing it has to do for us is give us patience, you know? You are a continuing project. You have a power and a tool that so many people don't have to write inside yourself. You have to be careful with that tool. You know, I've seen people go too fast and just crumble. You know, um, it will be whenever I write something the first time. If I just need to get it out, it's ridden with cliche. It's and I think I've really done something because I've said it. But you have to keep every time you go back to it, change one thing. Okay, make something more specific. Um, work with the language or something. Work with a form. Try to put it in a form or something. You might not succeed, but just changing the thing is a success. And then make yourself feel like you're going deeper into it each time. Baby steps, though. And cliche, more specific you are, the less there will be. There's a, it's a hard thing to get out of. Believe me, there are people I teach in the MFA program and sometimes I'm in these workshops with really noted poets and they're still doing, they could still let cliches drip. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing as long as you're working on it. Okay. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. What would be a solid writing prompt to get us going to fulfill? Oh, Celine's like, I'm on that.
I just wanted to know.
You know what? I will. I'm going to post the poem. I'll also post it's going to be it's a lot of little tiny prompts like something tragic, a time you wouldn't stop laughing about. What I normally do is I have people work with it work with it in a map, but there are a lot of things in there that the first time you saw the most blood you remember seeing, and what they're meant to do is to just get people thinking about larger stories and times and stuff, and that might help. So I'll post that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And Patricia,
Right.
if you
Yes.
send me these forms tonight with the poems and these,
You'll
I'll send
do.
an email. We'll get an email out to everybody with the links for the videos because this is being videoed and we'll put it on our YouTube channel, but we'll also email everybody the forms.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be good because that way, before I email them to you, if I think of anything else, which I'm sure I will, I'll send you everything. But yeah, I'll send that thing. I've got another thing of some more specific prompts. Maybe I'll send a couple of things of prompts and I'll send these poems. Okay. How do you keep all that paper organized? What paper? The 10 pages? Oh, it's in a notebook.
10 pages a day. Yeah, all the years of writing.
Yeah, my students had gotten to the habit once I told them about this of giving me like those really big journal things, and so I just use those. Sometimes I use the legal pad. Sometimes but it helps me to keep it a big thing because I'm so often going back to say what that was last month or that was yeah, it's like that. Or just start to fill legal pads. And when you fill them, keep a cardboard box under your desk and just throw it in the box. I'm sorry. I wish I had a filing system for you. You can put your 10 pages in the computer. You can, I think there's something about the actual, you're on the computer all the time anyway. So I think there's something about the actual movement of pen on paper that helps. Knowing that you have to write the 10 10 pages on the computer is nothing, but if you have to write them, I think that's important to do though. I think it's important to write them. And other, okay, all the beautiful babies. Oh, thank you. We know some folks need to leave. Okay, bye. Thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, this sounds like, all right, the whole thing. Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to go hand you a glass of cold water. This is my coffee my husband gave me an hour ago. When did you become comfortable with form? Okay, I think that might be. When I realized when someone told me how close I already was to it and drew me a line from form to spoken word, that there's stuff, there's things that I heard and things that I wanted to hear, and I would change the things I heard to what I wanted to hear. And someone sat me down and showed me how every time I did that, I was getting closer to form. And so that took a lot of the scary stuff about it. I am a kind of a bad teacher of it though, because once you start to internalize it, you get mad at people who can't hear it right away. You know, it's like, that's an iambic line, why can't you? You know, it's not in, you know, some people, it's just not in them. I had my college students, they had to march in. I kept them outside the door. Then I opened the door. I had to march into class in iambic. You know, and then they had to beat on their. It has to, because some people don't. They don't get the line in the same way. So you have to get it into their system another way. And sometimes it's just, there's a book that I have called, it's by Stephen Fry, the actor. Yeah, and I can't think of what it is now. I keep getting it messed up with Timothy Steele's book. It's a poetry instruction book. The Ode Less Traveled. Thank you. And he's got great funny. He keeps it funny. He doesn't make it all ponderous, like, if you do not learn these things, you shall not be. Yay! There you go. You shall not be. And it's perfect if you're just getting to form. He takes it through. He starts with the iambic line, you know, and there's exercises at the end of each chapter. He tells jokes throughout it. It's so accessible. And I made a mistake of buying something by Miller Williams a long time ago and said, I'm going to teach myself form. I'm going to start at page 1 and I'm just going to do all the exercises. Unless you are reading form and talking to people about it and hearing it by other poets and stuff, you're not going to get it. And you're so lucky with the internet now. The people that you can hear, you know, I mean, from way back, the ones who, you know, the guys with the voice, when only men were writing poetry, they will, you can hear them, and they say it so ponderously, so you can hear that you know, and so listening to it and stuff, but talking to people about it, someone else who's trying to learn it, that's invaluable. You can't do it by yourself. And that book, The Ode Less Traveled By, is amazing. A lot of introductory form students swear by it. They really like it. You know, the question about the name of the barber. Oh, it was the name of the barber poem that I went off talking about the Undertaker. You didn't ask me. Anyway, it's called The Barber. It is in, and that's the poet's name. Oh, Leslie, not Leslie, Lisa. Oh, Jesus. Lisa Biscani. I can't think of the name of the book right now, but I think she only had one poetry book. A lot of people who started in the slam were so incredibly talented, but they never meant for it to be a thing for the rest of it. So they're off like selling insurance. Most of the people I know are still in the art stuff somehow. I think a lot of people made a commitment. Yeah, made a commitment that this is going to be something that lasts. And so I've known Matt forever. You know, Louis Rodriguez, who used to be the poet laureate of LA, I've known since, the 80s. There was an 80s, by the way. There was a 1980s. It didn't start in 2000. I'm looking at y'all like 80s, 1880s? No. Right? I see some folks shaking their head like, yeah, all these youngins. I see y'all. Okay, so that's that. All right, so that's it, I think. Thank you very much. The National Book Awards are going to be on at 7 o'clock. I mean, going to be on my 7 o'clock, but soon. So you get to see, a good thing I used to do with my students is I would have them study the National Book Award poets about a month before, as soon as they were announced, and then they would take bets. We would not like, I wasn't gambling in class, but we would vote on who we wanted to win, and it made them interested in poetry, which is kind of like a weird thing. Okay. I remember the first poem I wrote about a photographer on this. Am I going to be able to see this chat? Is there a way I can see the chat when we're gone?
I'll
Wait,
take it and I'll send
there's
it.
a save chat thing, but I don't know where it goes.
If it fails for you, I will send you a copy because it'll
Okay.
save when I stop the video.
Right, because those 3 dots next to file says save chat. So I'm just gonna say that.
All right.
And then I'd like to come back and watch and see all this. Okay. All right. Hey guys, all y'all, thanks for hanging out. This was fun. I meant to read more poems, but I like talking about making poems. So I hope that was good for everybody. I'm just looking at your faces now. Yeah. Hey, Nebraska. And wait, this was open to like people from other places?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's mostly Nebraskans here, but I know there was somebody from Toronto, someone from, oh, hello. I think there was somebody from Chile.
Chile.
Yeah.
This is great.
Denver's in the house.
Wow, these friendly faces. Jamaica, you have a great face. You have a great smile. I keep going back and say, Jamaica's still smiling? Yes, we're good. All right, so I'm going to go and pour myself a glass of wine and put my ball gown in for the National Book Awards.
Right.
I could at least dress for it. It's so good to kind of semi-meet all you guys. You have my email address. If you think of a question later, if you go over your notes and you want a question or you just want to say, hi, here's a poem or something like that, you can send that to me. Matt, thank you. This was fun.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you
Sure.
for going into overtime tonight even.
No, that's okay. I love talking about poetry. I really do. I'm gonna get myself something to eat and I will, happy writing everybody. Okay, love you guys. And I'll send you that stuff right now. Okay, Matt?
Yep.
Okay, all right. All right, bye guys, stay safe.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Okay, you are welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you so much.
Like to give a quick shout out to Humanities Nebraska, who makes this possible and our other touring artists possible. So thanks, Humanities Nebraska. But have a wonderful night. Go watch the National Book Awards, people.